Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Wednesday, January 16, 2019, and I want to thank you for visiting the Stonewall Research channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much. Please do hit the like button if you like the video, and please do subscribe. I have some great information in my videos that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Okay, without further ado, we'll get to my video here called Homo Giganticus. That seems to be the alternative term used for what we call the giants, and we're not going to use the term giants anymore. It's a mistake that these guys in alternative research, whoever they are, Hugh Newman, Jim Vieira, Fritz Zimmerman, the Mormons, whoever it is, Bible believers, it doesn't matter. It's just giants is a poor way to prove this point. It invokes mythical things, Jack and the Beanstalk and, the genie from Aladdin's lamp, whatever it is. The only place I'm not going is Paul Bunyan, because Paul Bunyan is an interesting story, my friends. Maybe I'll do a video on that. This comes from the outbacks of North America. There might be something about that. I don't know, but it's very interesting that the Paul Bunyan story comes from the outback. I like this picture. That's Paul Bunyan with Big Blue, his ox, cutting down trees right and left with his big giant axe. So I'm not going there because that's a very interesting story, my friends. Okay, so we're going to get into this a little bit, and again, we're not talking about the Jolly Green Giant or whatever it is. We're talking about people who are bigger than us, but not that much bigger over people who exist today, but, enough to say there's something significant about that. So, and I'm going to go over, my own research, that went, through these things, that through mainstream history that just happened to stick out. They stuck their necks out on some of these things that they recorded in historical records in archaeological digs. So, and it's all mainstream stuff. So, it's not like they can refute it or anything, but it's certainly, we're not talking about proving the existence of giants like the History Channel or Anunnaki, because anything that comes out of the History Channel, forget about, okay? They're probably trying to discredit it, not, give it, an affirmation. But in any case, let's get around to this, because there's a lot of information here. I want to cover it all for you and not, make it too long here. But first, we're going to go over some of the current data on height and the history of height. So I want to read to you from that, from this Wikipedia article. Let me see here. And you know what? A shout out to Ziggy Dan, a very faithful and loyal subscriber. He had pointed out a couple of things, and he added a couple of things like he usually does. It's, I welcome anything he comes up with because he's very astute. He had talked about the eruption of Laki in Iceland, and it just so happens in the 18th century, the late 18th century, 1783 to 84. Just read this. This was from the data I was going on in my video about the mystery eruption of 1808, 1809, and a relationship to the mud flood and a pestilence and the reason why there was empty cities, etc., etc. So listen to this. An eruption of Laki in Iceland was responsible for up to hundreds of thousands of fatalities throughout the northern hemisphere, over 25,000 in England alone, if you can believe that statistic. Underestimated, probably. And one of the coldest winters ever recorded in North America, 1783 to 84. Long-term consequences included poverty and famine that may have contributed to the French Revolution in 1789. Look, in 1883, a Krakatoa, that was, again, if you're going back to the late 18th century, early 19th century, as I was trying to explain in my video, about the mystery eruption in 1808 and 1809. Just the Earth was going through some tremendous geological things, weather phenomena, seismic phenomena, just undergoing a tremendous amount of things. And I think it was, we don't have an accurate picture of exactly how bad it was. And it was probably a lot worse than we're being led to believe. So in any case, a shout out at Ziggy Dan. Great subscriber. Thank you very much. Appreciate it very much. Okay, so let's get to this stuff. Okay, and this article here is on human height. So this is current data on human height. It goes through the sort of minutiae and stuff. Okay. The development of human height can serve as an indicator of two key welfare components, namely nutritional quality and health. In regions of poverty or warfare, environmental factors like chronic malnutrition during childhood or adolescence may result in delayed growth and or marked reductions in adult stature, even without the presence of any of these medical conditions. Some research indicates that a greater height correlates with greater success in dating and earning in men, although other research indicates that this does not apply to non-white men. So whatever, there's kind of stupid thing. All right, so I want to read here about the history of human height, okay? Listen to this stuff. In the 150 years since the mid-19th century, the average human height in industrialized countries has increased up to 10 centimeters, 3.9 inches on there. However, these increases appear to have largely leveled off. So despite the fact that we have good nutrition and all, we should be growing, it's all leveled off, okay? Despite good nutrition, good health care, et cetera, we should be getting larger, but it's leveled off for some reason. They don't know why. Before the mid-19th century, there were cycles in height with periods of increase and decrease. However, examination of skeletons show no significant differences in height from the Stone Age through the early 1800s. Isn't that interesting? In general, there were no big differences in regional height levels throughout the 19th century. The only exceptions of this rather uniform height distribution were people in the Anglo-Saxon settlement regions, right where Stonehenge is, etc., who were taller than the average, and people from Southeast Asia were below average height. So isn't that interesting? That people from these areas, okay, where there are stories of giants in these settlement areas from Britain, okay, where there are stories of giants, all kinds of stone constructions, dolmen, etc., okay, isn't it interesting that the people are taller from there? Okay, listen to this, okay. In the 18th and 19th century, people of European descent in North America were far taller than those in Europe and were the tallest in the world. Well, isn't that interesting too? Okay, maybe there's a narrative here we don't fully understand. Listen to this, the original indigenous population of Plains Native Americans was also among the tallest populations of the world at the time. Okay, so where the plains are and all these mounds and the Adena and Hopewell and Temple Mound Builders, etc., were mostly in, okay, were these very tall Native Americans, as they say, that the Native Americans don't like. It's the original people, native peoples, is enough to say, okay? Listen to this. Okay, according to the study, economists John Comlos and Francesca Cinderella, in the first half of the 18th century, the average height of an English male was 165 centimeters, 5 foot 5 inch, and the average height of an Irish male was 168 centimeters, 5 foot 6 inch. The estimated mean height of English, German, Scottish soldiers was 163.6 centimeters to 165.9 centimeters, 5 foot 4 to 5 foot 5. Okay, these are small guys, okay? So, I mean, if you were like 6'5" or almost 7 foot tall, standing next to these guys, I mean, I don't know. My grandfather knew Bill Bradley, and he called me over. He was from the Knicks, from the old Knicks. Okay, he called me in his office one day to meet the guy, and I met the guy. I don't know, he was like 6'8" or 6'10" or 11 or something, whatever it was. I mean, the guy was like gigantic. My grandfather was 6'5", so he's a pretty big guy too. So, look, I mean, and I knew a girl down the street was dating a college basketball player. The guy was over 7 foot tall. She was like 5'1". It looked ridiculous. It looked like a giant standing next to her, okay? And we'll talk about that, how things can look that way, although we're not talking about people of that size. And again, guys, I told you to think about the megafauna, okay? I'm not going through the list now today. We're going to talk about it maybe a different time. But the megafauna of the Ice Age, when you have woolly mammoths and saber-toothed tigers and bears and all this, I saw lists and lists and lists of animals, okay, that have the same name today, whatever they are, a lot of them, not all of them, but they were all bigger in size during the Ice Age, and they all have counterparts today that are smaller, right? But somehow, if you want to, say that there's a possibility that occurred with the human race or a humanoid species, okay, then you're crazy. But I'm telling you, I'm reading you all this stuff just to show you. Again, I was just curious that the British had those people in those areas where they have all the giant stories and whatnot. So let me go through the rest of this article here. Okay, it just goes over the tallest living man today is 8'3". The tallest man in modern history was Robert Pershing Wadlow from Illinois, okay, where all the mounds are, okay, in the United States. Okay, he was 8'11", all right, at the time of his death. All right, to some lady in China, she's 8'1", died at the age of 17. So, look, it's possible for human beings today to reach these gigantic heights, okay? If you want to call them giants, I think you're doing it a disservice. These are just extremely large humans, humanoids, whatever it is. Okay, let me read the rest of this to you if I can find the damn thing now. Let me see here. I know I have it somewhere. Sorry, guys, bear with me for a second here while I find the rest of the article here. Sorry, guys, I know I have it somewhere. Okay, this is the last little bit of the article here, and it refers to current data. Men from Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Netherlands, Croatia, Serbia, Montenegro have the tallest average height today. Okay, I'm not going to read the rest of it to you. It's just minutia, but isn't it interesting that all these people around the Black Sea area, okay, where Brian Foster did the genetic testing of the Paracas mummies in Peru and found that the DNA traced back to the Black Sea area, okay, where it just so happens that all these countries happen to be, all right? So, I don't know about you, but I find that extremely interesting that it would be that way, since Brian Foster did the DNA testing and found, and they also find many elongated skulls in the Black Sea area. Okay, an abundance of them. And we've seen the old pictures from Malta of the skulls with all these giant videos and stuff, but it was obviously huge people of some sort, humanoid forms or whatever, but we're not really talking, but you have to think it all in relative terms, as somebody who was maybe 8 feet tall is going to be larger in size and frame and everything else. But let me continue here, because again, let me stick to the format here, okay? I'm going to read something to you from the book that I'm currently reading from C.W. Saran. I had all my notes organized, but I don't have organized now. Sorry, guys. Okay, so this is from the book that made Saran famous of bringing archaeology to the layman and all that kind of stuff. God's Greatest and Scholars, okay? And I'm just going to read to you. I've been getting into this book. I've been reading and I'm seeing if there's anything interesting. But this I found was very interesting, and this is about Pompeii, okay? And what they found there, obviously found, people actually frozen in position by the lava, the ash, and then, they were sort of mummified in their own way, but, coated with stone, actually, and they found all these things. So here, let me just read this here. This is called from a chapter in this book called The Queen of Naples. They're doing some excavations at Pompeii. So let me read it to you. Neither courage nor a cool head nor brute strength helped those who delayed their flight too long. The remains of a truly gigantic man were uncovered. Okay? You see that? A truly gigantic man were uncovered. In vain he had tried to protect his wife and their 14-year-old child, who were hastening along ahead of him. Apparently, with the last despairing surge of strength, he had tried to pick them up, but just then the fumes had stupefied him, and slowly he crumpled, rolled over on his back, and stretched out, in which position ashes buried him and preserved his tremendous form. The excavators poured plaster of Paris into the depression where he had lain, and in this way secured the proportions of the dead Pompeian. Okay, so here's the actual archaeological evidence of a truly gigantic man, okay? Because they have it there. They made the cast of the guy and everything, and he was truly gigantic, okay? If everybody was gigantic from that time, then why would this be even a story? I mean, that's something like the same people who's like, say, yeah, when you're 90 years old, you could climb. I know a guy who climbed Mount Everest. He's 97 years old. And, look, if every 97-year-old could climb Mount Everest, then it wouldn't be a story. It's a story because this guy did it. He's probably the only one who could possibly do it. Okay, otherwise it was just anybody could do it. It's not newsworthy. Okay, so the guy was a gigantic guy, and I took this out of Saran's, book there from 1945, God's Greatest and Scholars. So here's just some archaeological information. I mean, there are people in the alternative research community that say, that people were living, giants were living among, people our size, and, Tolkien wasn't talking about fantasy. There was all kinds of races of different size, and there seems to be some evidence of that, okay? Even larger skeletons as this, but I'm not including it because there's scant evidence of that, and there's a lot more evidence for skeletons of unusual size, okay, like the Plains Indians, right? Okay, from the mounds that were recorded by the Smithsonian. I mean, that's data that you can get, but I mean, they just don't have the skeletons for some strange reason. They don't have any skeletons at all. You can ask for everything else, They got that, but the skeletons they don't got. So, I mean, nobody finds that extremely curious, bizarre. I mean, they don't seem to have any of that stuff for some reason. Okay, so in any case, I just wanted to read that from Saram's book there, God's Greatest and Scholars, but I want to go through all the stuff that I brought to light while doing my research that was in so many of my videos, even from a while back already, okay, starting with King Mongotucksee, okay, from the Montauk tribe, King Mongotucksee. Okay, and I mean, I've read it so many times. In the original video, which was my original videos from the White Stone culture, okay, which was in 2017 already, okay, where I read from this book, all right, it's difficult to see with this, all right, Indian Tribes of the Hudson's River, okay, by Rutenberg, a pretty famous guy. The book is in the Library of Congress, okay, and I read about King Mongotucksee, the king of the Montauk tribe, okay, which I'll read to you from this human story of Long Island. I mean, I've heard this story so many times, even written by Native Americans doing their own research, et cetera, about King Mongotucksee, but also in this book, okay, Tribes of the Hudson River, okay, I also heard accounts of them defacing the cliff sides on the side of the Hudson River Valley there, which are very high cliffs, mountainous cliffs made of rock, okay? There was carvings in those rocks, okay, and they were busy destroying them. So, who knows if anything's left. Maybe under a closer examination you can find remnants of it, but they destroyed it all. Okay, and for some reason at Brighton Beach, you have these jetties that are made out of stone that are put there to prevent the erosion of the beach. Okay, that have these faces all over them, these, intricately carved faces that look of a higher level of craftsmanship and can only be carved with metal tools, not stone tools, to carve this kind of granite and stuff. Okay. And they said it was done during the 20s and 30s, but they're full of crap. They don't know. The things are face down. How are you going to carve things face down on the beach? It's ridiculous. So I'm going to try to get out there one day because it's close. So anyway, I recounted King Mongotucksee. Let me read here from this pamphlet. This is a pamphlet from Long Island, from my local library. Done by somebody in the community there, okay? Long Knife. This is famous Indian chieftains, okay? Before the arrival of white people on Long Island, the Montauk tribe had a famous chief with heroic and legendary qualities named Mongotucksee, or Long Knife. According to tradition, quote, he was of gigantic form, proud and despotic in peace and terrible in war, unquote. The Narragansett and the Mohawk Indians on the mainland recognized and feared him. Long Knife was an ambitious leader. It is said that he attempted to dig a canal joining the Great Peconic Bay and Shinnecock Bay at Canoe Place, where Indians carried their canoes across the narrow neck of land separating two bodies of water. Traces of this canal could be seen until recent times, okay? So the thing's been washed away. And John Jensen, who knows of this, okay, can see it with the satellite photographs, okay, the aerial photographs of the area, okay? It's just old. There's no traces of it now, but when they got there, I gave accounts of this in one of my videos that they could see it, okay, in my Wikipedia misinformation. And the guy had 4 sons, okay, so of different tribes here on Long Island, which is, this is credible recounting here, and apparently he was of gigantic form. All right? That's number one. That's one video that I had that information from a book from the Library of Congress. All right? So let's see here. All right. So next was with Verrazano and his recounting of what he found here in my interesting facts video. All right. So let's see. There you go. They exceed us in size, and they have it's a little bit before. Very fair. He reads it. His head was without covering. His hair was tied back in various knots, and around his neck he wore a large chain ornamented with many stones of different colors. Now, here's the really interesting part. Pay attention to this. They exceed us in size, and they are of very fair complexion. Some of them incline more to a white, and others to a tawny color. Their faces are sharp, their hair long and black, upon the adorning of which they bestow great pains. Their eyes are black and sharp, their expression mild and pleasant. So, there you go. Okay. There you go. They exceed us in size. Not only height, but size. Okay, this was an accounting by Verrazano, who was expected to bring back accurate accounts. Okay? So, I don't care what anybody says, you know, the people are going to call them giants or whatever it is wrong, okay? These are just extremely large human beings, or, you know, maybe hybrids of people who were here before. I don't know, but I have a tendency to think that because of John Jensen's research that goes so far back in time with these huge artificial harbors. What were they for? What do you need giant 2,000 and 3,000 foot artificial harbors for? 5 and 6 and 5,000 BC. Why why do you need that? Okay, you got to think about these things. Okay, so there's an account, another, and one of my videos taken from mainstream. This was from Beauchamp, another famous guy, historian. Okay, supposedly gives all the accurate information or whatever it is. But this was an account by Verrazano. Okay, so it's available to anybody's history if you're looking through the Spanish or Portuguese records or whatever. So look. Another account of a gigantic, large people, which is unusual. It's unusual today. It was more unusual back then because people evidently were shorter in the 1800s. So what somebody is 7 foot height or 6'5" or whatever would look to somebody who's 5'3", 5'5", 5'6", whatever it is. Like I said, I'm 5'8", and people who are that tall, super huge to me. I don't know. All right, let's take a look at another one. All right, let's try to wrap this up here because I want to get through it. Oh, well, the Devaka account in my Jefferson in the Mounds video. Okay, let me see if I have it here because I want to read to you about Devaka. Okay, here it is right here. Right, because this guy is hated by the Spanish historians. They want to glorify the conquistadors and say how wonderful they were, while this guy was one of those early Spanish explorers. He was shipwrecked with 2 other guys, and he was the first one to go into the interior of the United States. He was found 8 years later by Spanish conquistadors out in Mexico, came up into the southwest where he was, but he had been held by Indians, he'd been held prisoner, made slave, all this kind of stuff. So just listen to this little snippets here, okay? Albert Nunez Cabeza de Vaca, our hero, okay? Saram's saying he's a hero. You gotta listen to Saram, like with my video, the Towers of Silence. He's being sarcastic about that. If you didn't catch that, the Towers of Silence, because he's not saying anything. Nobody's saying anything about him. What's his face there did all the, the archaeology over there, Frank Hibben, right? And he calls it the Towers of Silence because they don't count it for anything. They don't say anything. So you got to catch his sarcasm there. So this guy is his hero, one of the unjustly obscure heroes in the history of North America exploration, for his deeds have been overshadowed by the exploits of men like Coronado and De Soto. Was the treasurer of an expedition headed by Panfilo de Narvaez, who set out like so many others to conquer part of the unknown world in the north. In April of 1528, the Narvaez's fleet reached the coast of Florida near what is now Tampa Bay, and then the ship sank. There was a storm or whatever, and they were shipwrecked. And, they were traveling through the interior. So listen to what he said, okay? And this is in my video, Jefferson in the Mounds, I believe. Let me see. What do I have here? Okay. Yeah. So my video, Jefferson in the Mounds, where I talk about, what he encountered. On a Florida expedition were dangerous warriors, tall, strong, agile, and armed with enormous bows. He reports that one of their arrows penetrated 9 inches into a trunk of a tree near him. But then he met tribes of small stature possessing only primitive weapons, actually Stone Age men. What astonished him most was the multiplicity of their languages. Tribes that lived close together could communicate with one another only by sign language, but in his truthful fashion, he remarks concerning these people, if they were not large, our fears made giants of them, exclamation point, end of quote. So if they were not large, our fears made giants of them. So they're extremely large people. That's highly unusual. Okay, next. Okay, that was Jefferson and Mound. Oh, Annie Moore's account of the Indian burial ground video. Okay, this is the Indian burial ground with the wife of a famous archaeologist who wrote her own book to tell her own story about what was found and everything else. So listen, let me see if I can get it here. Something quite extraordinary. A shield 36 inches long and 31 inches wide, unusually rich in ornamentation covering the greater part of the body. The shield was tightly woven, the outer rim coated with pitch and sprinkled with tiny selenite splinters, dark red towards the center with a greenish-blue border, a superb piece of work. Beside it lay axes, undoubtedly weapons rather than tools, one of which was marvelously shaped out of hematite. Get this now. There was also a long knife of red quartzite. The man had been unusually tall, and strong of frame, and his expensive burial showed that he must have... Okay, unusually tall and strong of frame. That was this lady. I had the paperwork somewhere. In Saran's book, Anne Morris, she was the wife of an archaeologist, and she wrote her own book, and she wanted to tell the things that her husband could not include in his research work because they didn't want to accept it. And that's why Saran was reporting about it, is because they did not want to accept. Great prestige, all right, guys? That they didn't want to add that in because they couldn't explain, how big this guy was, the unusual shield he has, and just another account, another mainstream account, but this one was off the cuff, right? Because Saran reported in his book because he wanted to tell a story about what they wouldn't accept. And, should really be told about is they have no reason not to accept it because the only reason is that it doesn't fit their narrative. Okay? So let's see. What's the next one here? Okay, so the last one was my Prove It video where I show about William Ritchie and, in this pamphlet from New York State. He was the head archaeologist. He did all these things. I was talking about it, I believe, in my last video about the 14-inch combs. Like I said, when somebody gets buried, say, when I die, okay, guys, I want you to throw some large stuff in there, and I'm going to need a comb to comb my hair. Okay, I want you to make it 14 inches. So his friend says, well, why 14 inches? Why not 16 inches or 12 inches or what? It's like, no, it's got to be 14 inches. So they found, many of these things apparently. But as I'll recount to you, if I can find the paperwork here somewhere, for that stage where, evidently they say this stage, there were no skeletons found. But let me see if I can just play this part, if it's going to play. Skeletal remains have been found of this first... Okay, this is not it. Let me see.